Hi guys, it's Danny Flexen here with SO Live and delighted to be joined by Mr. Ayman Khan, who's doing some sort of Two Ronnies-esque introduction there. Ayman, you make a good mind, but we do want you to talk, assuming you haven't muted yourself.
Hopefully you can hear me. I haven't done the muting business. I think we left that back in 2023. We haven't left close decisions or controversies back in 2023. That's still going on in 2024. People in the chat are still here in 2024, ready to discuss and chop it up, and we are ready to chop it up too. I'm looking forward to all the action, looking to talk about all the biggest talking points in the boxing week and discuss, of course, Misfits boxing, surely, Danny, right? Nah, I'm just kidding. The main boxing.
I'm with my boy Turkey Al Sheikh when it comes to misfits and crossover boxing. I'm afraid we don't have that anymore. We're with the Saudi royalty, so no one can really argue about that. But we'll be talking more about Mr. Turkish, as I think Chev Clark called him the other day. We'll be talking about Mr. Turkish in a bit. But yeah, we are the most interactive show on Boxing YouTube. Please do hit us with your likes, your comments, your questions, and subscribe if you haven't already. We've already had Thunder Road, friend of the channel, in the chat, drumming up some interest, drumming up some business for Seconds Out. We appreciate him, but we appreciate all of you as well. So please do interact with us. We'll go to the chat shortly, but our main topic for anyone who's seeing the thumbnail and the title to this stream is what happened in Liverpool on Saturday night. The headline is larceny in Liverpool, ? Before people get too angry, in case Joe Gallagher happens to be watching this. I'm sure he's an avid viewer. And that was Natasha Jonas's verdict after 10 hard-fought 2-minute rounds with Mikaela Mayer in defense of her welterweight world title. Caused a lot of consternation. I've seen a lot of people complaining, calling it a robbery, the usual stuff. And just as often as we see that, we see people on the other side say, oh, it was a close fight, could have gone either way. People were too quick to scream robbery. What I haven't seen thus far is anyone on social media who actually had Natasha Jonas a victor in the fight. Ayman, you were there live, ringside in Liverpool, best seats in the house, of course, for Seconds Out. What did you make of it? How did you score it?
Yeah, so I'm probably going to get some stick, but I'll take the stick here with the fight. I wasn't one of the people that called Natasha Jonas the victor, but I am one of the persons that called this a close fight, and I did call the fight myself a draw. I couldn't really pick between either fight because of the way the fight played out for me. I thought in spits and spats of the fight, I can't name out the rounds particularly that straight to my head, but I thought that Natasha started fast and then maybe faded through the middle and then tried to have a strong end. Jonas did have a lot more output, but sometimes through the fight as well that Mayer did have a lot of output, but Jonas sometimes through those rounds did pick out some real good punches. Maybe as well too, just a bit of reading the fight wrong, and a lot of other people maybe reading it better than I am. I can admit that in some occasions that might happen as well too. But for me, I couldn't split the two fighters, and I thought it was an even fight. And one that I would like to see again. Real good atmosphere, real good outing for both, a good advert for the sport, although the decision for a lot of people wasn't a good advert for the sport. It's the same old commercial for the sport. But for me, I wouldn't mind seeing that run that fight back. Gets a bit more of a bigger spotlight on it. So all in all, really, the potential there for that makes it a lot more bigger. But Natasha Jonas has her plans to go on and collect other belts in the welterweight division. But I mean, this is one of the things as well with boxing fans. I remember when like Ryder came on the end of some bad decisions, and for a lot of people, Jacobs beat Ryder, and they said, "Oh, you know what? He's kind of owed one." Jonas has also been on the end of a couple of bad decisions. Do boxing fans also feel the way that maybe Jonas is sort of owed one? And did she get that owed one here? That pay it forward kind of thing? I don't know. You've got to kind of deal with things individually. But for me, this was a very close fight. For me, this was a draw. And for me, that means that Jonas escapes with her belt.
Well, yeah, we'll go to the chat for some of those views in a minute, but we have got a poll up on the live chat. And we're asking it quite simply, do you feel it was a robbery or do you feel it was a close fight? So please do vote in our poll. Owen says not a robbery or a close fight. So he's kind of shat all over our poll straight away. Says Mayer won by 7 rounds to 3, 6-4 at worst. Surely that is a robbery then, if she clearly won and you can't see any way Jonas won, yet she wasn't given the decision. I digress. Ramoney Mode XD says Mayer 7-3. Jonas won the first 3 rounds and then Mayer won the rest. Easy win for Mayer, he says. Owen says it was sad. Thunder Road says, I had Mayer 6-4, but acknowledged I could see some rounds go either way. No robbery with this split decision. And then we had Base the Kid, the hardcore casual, said he had Jonas winning. So he's the only one so far that I've seen anywhere that had Jonas winning. But then I haven't looked at, certain places where her fan base might come from. I haven't seen, I'm sure a lot of the boxers in Liverpool that are often quick to comment on social media probably have backed her, but I'm not sure. I'd have to have a look. But it does raise the question of judging in general. So I wasn't ringside like Ayman. I watched it on TV. Kind of half watched it, if I'm honest. I was flicking between that and the NFL playoff game between the Ravens and the Texans, which was particularly fun to watch. But I did watch most of the rounds in their entirety. And without scoring it on paper round by round, it did seem like Mayer got the better of it. But it did seem like a lot of rounds are close. And one thing I should say that in female boxing, particularly because they are 2-minute rounds, the pace is a lot faster and it can often be harder, certainly in my view, to pick a definitive winner of a 2-minute round compared to a 3. So it wouldn't surprise me if there were more rounds than the typical men's world title fight that could legitimately go either way. The whole thing about Jonas, was she owed one? I think it's a valid point. I don't think that would have entered into the judges' minds, however. But I do see having come on the wrong end of close fights. And again, these weren't robberies, but on the wrong end of close fights with Katie Taylor, Terry Harper, etc. You can kind of understand it. I suppose these things even out. That's what they say in football, don't they? These calls, whether it's VAR or the referee himself, they even out over the course of a season. So maybe you could look at it in that way. But I think you said there about Natasha Jonas got other plans. She wants to win other belts and so on. I understand all that. But I think if she doesn't fight Mayer next in a rematch, there will be quite a sizable proportion of the fan base who would consider it a duck. In the same way that a lot of people criticise Josh Taylor for not immediately rematching Jack Catterall after his controversial decision win there. And they're only now looking at a rematch, and Taylor's lost to Teofimo Lopez in the interim. Now, while Taylor had a very valid point in that Lopez was a much higher profile fighter and consequently fight than a Jack Catterall rematch, it didn't go his way, which kind of undermined his argument a little bit. But also it was left to kind of simmer. And while there will be, I'm sure, a big audience for the rematch now, maybe not as much as if they'd done it straight away. And Taylor has come in for a lot of criticism from fans, from Catterall's camp, of course, as well, about not going in for an immediate rematch. Just going to go to the chat and then I will go back to Ayman where we talk about the broader point of the judging in the UK. So Ramoni Mode XD says, Jonas's coach, presumably Joe Gallagher, said you have to take the belt from the champion. What a load of bollocks. It is a load of bollocks, and there is scoring criteria laid down, and having to rest or, take the title from the champion isn't on there. But a lot of people do still believe that. A lot of people in the boxing industry as well. Thunder Rose says, would like to see 3-minute rounds for championship fights. The extra minute would potentially help in differentiating who won the round. That's exactly what I was saying. Larry Liston, female boxing is incredibly hard to score. Again, I think that is a lot to do with the brevity of the rounds. SFS, didn't I buy a sofa from you? Says, Mayer controlled the fight from 3rd to 10th, 7-3 Mayer. Larry Liston, the changes in the rules from 3 to 2 minutes, bigger gloves and 10 rounds for title fights make it almost an entirely different sport, which can make it considerably harder to score. Base the Kid says, sup Thunder Road. All right, probably didn't need to read that one. Owen says, if these things even out, does Mayer get a gift next fight? She's been robbed by boxer twice in a row. I actually thought the Alicia Baumgartner fight was quite close. I didn't have a major problem with her getting that decision, to be honest. But maybe I'm in the minority with that one. Ramoni Mo, Serrano did 3-minute rounds and he's having another fight with them. They are much better. Haters have opinions, says they need to make it 12 3-minute rounds. I think most people are agreeing on that. But the WBC have got all sorts of data which suggests it's not a great idea for female boxers to do that. So maybe take it up with Maurizio, Big Mo, the real Big Mo. Makes Sense 71 says Mayer went up 2 weight divisions but fought like the power punching bully, backing Jonas up all fight. Bear in mind, Jonas was fighting at what? Lightweight before she moved up to 154 and then down to 147. So you're really looking at 2 lightweights fighting well above their natural division, although Mayer obviously is the taller, broader fighter generally. Haters have opinion. Jonas's best rounds were round 1 and round 3. So, Ayman, just to throw it back to you, this isn't the first, it's the first of 2024, I guess, that's been accused of being a robbery, but it isn't the first in recent years here in the UK. And it's become in recent times, excuse me, we're getting the sort of bad rap, if you like, that the likes of Germany and Italy used to get when I first entered boxing media, maybe 15, 20 years ago. It was always, you have to knock them out to get a draw. That was the old cliche about British fighters challenging for European or world titles further afield. Now, do you think the UK has kind of taken on that unwanted mantle in American fighters and fighters from Europe, probably a bit reluctant to challenge a champion on UK soil?
Yeah, I completely understand and get that feeling. And it's never when you look at two fighters and you want to have the outcome be the outcome on, it being a fair scoring system or a fair and equal opportunity for whichever fighter coming in from wherever they're from, whether it be a north-south divide in the UK or whether it be from abroad in Europe or America, whatever it is, that they get a fair shake on the judges' scoring cards. But I also think as well that you've got to, in this instance, Mikaela Mayer will have understood that Top Rank haven't dipped enough in their pockets to bring Jonas over to America to have the fight there. So she will know going in that it's going to be a tough ask. This will be things that we're discussing right now about it being difficult to come to the UK and get a victory. She'll know that going in. So she'll have known, and whether that's fair or unfair, I'm just saying this as what's on the table there for her going into the fight. That did she do enough to make it clear enough? Well, clearly she didn't for those three judges, whether that was fair or not. But to that point, that's the uphill battle that she then accepts. To that point, that any fighter then accepts as well. And you should also make mention and notice of that too, as well. I think I'm sure I asked that of Mayer. If I didn't, then I should have. But I'm sure I asked of Mayer, are you not concerned about the judges scoring in this fight? And that's for them to then take that moment to say about that, to put a bit of pressure themselves, say, look, I am concerned. I'm a foreign fighter coming in. I don't know what to expect. I've seen what's happened to other fighters in this country. I want to have a fair shake as well, and put that bit of pressure on, make it known there. So then when you come at this outcome and you don't get the victory when you feel that you deserved it, then you can make more of a fuss about it too as well. So, but I think she also has to kind of, and any fighter comes over as well in these sorts of situations has to kind of also have a discussion with the promoter and say, well, we could have avoided this. I was clearly going to win the fight, in my opinion. Why couldn't you put a bit more money in your pocket and bring her over here? And we wouldn't be discussing this right now. We'd be on to bigger and better things. And I think that's part of the discussion as well, too. But it's one of those things where, for me, if you know what you're going into, you take the fight, you take it, and you don't get the outcome. It's not the best situation. It should definitely change. But you know what you're in for, really.
And this is why Uncle Frank Warren, who we will discuss more in the next segment, always tries as hard as he can to get not every fighter, but the ones he considers to be money makers, stars of the future, home advantage for their first major title shot. Because there is always that risk. And I think, it shouldn't be. Bias shouldn't be allowed to creep in, but you can never be sure. Judges are human, like the rest of us. And although they're not paid directly by the promoters, they do have their expenses and accommodation compensated by the promoters. And, are you going to favour a promoter who puts you up in a shack, a bed and breakfast down the road miles away from the venue? Or are you going to favour a promoter who puts you up in a 5-star hotel? It's just human nature, isn't it? And not only that, you're in an arena with all the fans screaming for the hometown fighter, and Natasha Jonas in this case in Liverpool. And that's got to kind of sway things as well, even if it's subconsciously that, a flurry lands and most of the punches are taken on the arms and gloves of Mayer. But because you've heard all the fans cheering and Jonas seems buoyed by her apparent success, you might then believe that she did land more than she actually did. There's so many factors that go into it. But I think at a time in boxing where all the big fights are going to the Middle East, not the Far East, Neuer and Nue aside, but going to the Middle East and America probably even more so than the UK, we've come off a period here in Britain where we were a hotbed for boxing. Through Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, Anthony Joshua filling stadiums, Tyson Fury in more recent years. If we want to keep that, if we want to be a centre for boxing worldwide, we don't want to get this unwanted reputation for, not giving fair decisions out or backing hometown fighters. So that's something we probably should be concerned about as a boxing family or a boxing industry, if you like. What we've got. Ramoni Mode XD. Jonas is finished with boxing this year, she said, or something. Apparently since she's 39. So I hope she gives the rematch. Larry Liston, the problem I have with making it 12 rounds of 3 minutes is that they will take more damage. I'm not comfortable with females taking more damage for the sake of entertainment. It's a double-edged sword. I get that. You know, I get the whole, I don't like to see women getting punched in the face, or imagine it was your daughter or your sister. If it was my sister, I'd be all in favour. But that aside, oversharing aside, I think if you're comfortable watching them fight and you're comfortable with the idea of them fighting and equality and so on, I don't think it makes a difference at that point whether it's 3 minutes or 2 minutes. You're either comfortable with them taking the shots or you're not. And if you're not, then you don't have to watch, I suppose. Owen says, I think if the women's fights do stay at 2-minute rounds, don't be surprised if more women are encouraged to have the nuts, juice, and berries if they need KOs. Yeah, well, less said about that, the better, I think. Base the Kid, people were screaming robbery, but it was an American judge that scored the fight to Jonas. Yeah, judges can go one way or the other. It could be incompetence. It could be that they saw something different from what everyone else saw. But it could still be potentially corruption or bias or whatever. It doesn't have to be from the same country necessarily. It could be how you've been treated by the promoter, for example. It could be that you've been swayed by the atmosphere in the arena. There's loads of different reasons where unconscious bias can creep in. Hot Pies makes history by becoming the second person to have Jonas ahead. I had Jonas 96-95. Larry Liston, congratulating Owen for having a valid point. The robbery gets disguised. Daryl McFadden, she wasn't robbed. It was a close fight. Every time Mayer loses, people say she was robbed. I think she only lost twice. Man, come on. It is what it is. The fight was close. Fair enough. I know where you'll be voting in the poll. Just for people that are just tuning in, we've got a poll up. Was Natasha Jonas's victory over Mikaela Mayer a robbery, or was it simply a close fight? Please vote. Makes sense. 71. Mayer was unlucky versus Baumgardner as well. 2 Americans. Yeah, I mean, I felt that was a closer fight, but that's just me. Andrew Strachan, not just UK that has decisions like this, it's everywhere. It seems to be happening a lot more in the UK than it did in the past, though, as someone who's been in the boxing or on the periphery of the boxing business for a long time. Thunder Road is encouraging everyone to hit the thumbs up. Thank you, Thunder Road, and I join him in that encouragement. Larry Liston, I've seen way worse decisions in the US than in the UK or Germany. Ward versus Kovalev 1 and 2. 1 and 2? Surely Ward Kovalev 2 was pretty conclusive. Loma versus Haney. I mean, I thought that was quite a close fight. Triple G versus Canelo 1. I mean, I think only 2 of those 4 could be considered, even maybe robberies. I think UK actually does a decent job in judging outside fighters. Look at Bernardo Lopez getting the decision over Josh Warrington. Yeah, but if that's memorable, if that's like an exception to the rule, then maybe we do have an issue. But yeah, I'm not saying it's bad all the time, but it does seem to happen more often now. Thunder Road. Danny, are you going to write a favourable article for a promoter who invites you to his box at the Emirates for the Liverpool match on the 4th of February? Mate, I'll give him my firstborn kid if he invites me to the Liverpool match on the 4th of February. I might take the kid along. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He gets to watch a Liverpool match, deliver him to Uncle Frank, who now becomes Daddy Frank, and they can go off into the sunset and, I'll have fulfilled a dream. But that's all hypothetical, Thunder Road, and I don't know who you're talking about. Makes Sense 71 says Jonas started to clinch a lot as well. Ramoni Mo says, he's talking about the scoring system. Larry Liston, Ward versus Kovalev 2 ended in a low blow. Watch the tape. Yeah, Larry, I've obviously watched, if that is your real name, I've obviously watched Ward Kovalev 2, but I think it was going one way anyway. Kovalev was getting absolutely bullied in that rematch, and I don't think it would have made any difference. So I don't call that a robbery necessarily, but we can agree to disagree. So yeah, we're going to move on from Jonas Mayer now, but if you can, please vote in the poll, make your voice heard. Do you consider it a robbery? Do you consider it simply a close fight? We'll read out the poll results at the end of the show before we disappear. But it's now time to move on. And we mentioned Uncle Frank a couple of times already, but it became clear last week that we're going to be getting something that boxing fans have talked about in the UK for quite some time. And that's a Matchroom versus Queensberry event. A card prompted by Turki Al Sheikh, who else? HE, as they're now referring to him. That's like the buzz moniker for His Excellency. It's going to be 5 against 5, all at different weights, according to Queensberry's X account. And it's led to fans around the UK, probably around the world, talking about what potential matchups could go out. I put something out on the SecondsOut account, and I got immediately corrected. I think 3 of the 6 that I mentioned weren't actually Queensberry versus Matchroom because I hadn't kept up with the machinations of boxing and people leaving contracts and so on. But it's exciting times. And Ayman, how excited are you? What do you think we can expect from this event?
And that doesn't mean that won't change, Danny. It doesn't mean, contracts can get changed, fighters can get picked up and moved around and become free agents. So all the machinations of who versus who is still up for going on until the event actually happens. Excited, yeah, sure. Maybe not as excited as I was when this originally was pitched by Frank Warren during the COVID period. I mean, I suppose you're quite excited by that when nothing really was going on during the COVID period. So it meant a little bit more back then. And it meant a little bit more back then as well as to why Frank and Eddie or Frank, whoever one you want to call us the A side here, couldn't, knock their own heads together and come up with this to an agreement themselves without the need for any outside influence or outside money to get them together to draw up the QB versus MR fights. But we're here, which is good. We're here, promoters collaborating. Is always good, whether it's when it's outside of a purse bid or the need to, or backed up against the wall. So to see that voluntarily happening, with a bit of dosh extra as to paper over the volunteering or to grease the volunteering is good. But yeah, no, it's an exciting prospect, and maybe it can become something more than people want to see the return of the fights back in Eddie's back garden, a bit of a gimmick, bit of a concept, but something that was a little bit fresh and a bit of a different scenario. And this can be one of those things that can be recurring outside of it just being a one-off event. So that sort of idea is quite exciting in a sense. In terms of the fights there, I've seen quite a number of the same sort of fights being banded around, which are quite good. I've seen some fights that, I don't think I want to see either. But to just go through a couple of those, Yard versus Callum Smith, good fighting prospect. Sam Noakes versus Andy Cruz, not really interested in that fight, really. So this is just yeah, for sure. Maybe it was Andy Cruz looking for a bit of an easy payday. No offense to Sam Noakes, just levels there at the moment. Nick Ball versus Ray Ford, good fight in prospect, but there's a lot better fights for Nick Ball out there. I like the idea of Liam Davis versus Shabazz Massoud. That was a good little fight I saw pitched, as was Raven Chapman versus Guy Nicholson. I believe that Michael Benson tweeted this out in a conversation he had with Eddie as to fights that he'd pitched as potential ones to happen in the future. One fight I want to push out there that I thought about as well, potentially, which quite excites me, involves one of the names I just mentioned, Anthony Yard, and against potentially Billy Joe Saunders, who's looking to return to the ring. Billy, we don't know what weight he's at, and there's a thought that he might return at a heavier weight to see if he wants to stay there, to then go down to super middle or just compete at that heavyweight. I like the idea of Billy Joe Saunders versus Anthony Yard. Both fighters will see that as a scalp they can easily achieve. Billy Joe Saunders will feel he can box him. Anthony Yard will feel that Billy Joe Saunders hasn't got enough left and he can get to him eventually and knock him out in the later round. So that's something I'd like to see as top of my list, as well as maybe a Nick Ball versus Mauricio Lara as well in the future. But very exciting proposition. Hopefully the execution in the fights is flawless as well too. We get to see some good fights, not just the gimmick presented, but the fights backing up the idea too.
Just coming through in the chat, so we'll go through those. Ramoni Mode XD, Callum versus Yard, Hamza Shiraz versus Cash, Warrington versus Ball, etc. I think I suggested Shiraz versus Cash, and someone corrected me on X saying Cash is apparently a free agent. Obviously, hasn't fought for a while. Base the Kid says Justice Hooney versus Moses Italma. That's an interesting one. Raymond Ford versus Nick Ball. Nick Ball's obviously got a shot at the WBC title against Ray Vargas before any of that takes place in Saudi anyway. So whether he'll be ready for this, I think they said the second quarter of the year, didn't they, for Hearn versus Warren. Sky Nicholson versus Raven Chapman, as Ayman already mentioned. I think that was already in the works before this. That's a good one. Craig Richards versus Anthony Yard, which again, that's an interesting one. Is Craig Richards still with Matchroom? I'm trying to remember. I did interview him recently. I think he's a free agent, but I'd have to double check that. He's obviously training at the McGuigan gym now, Craig Richards, so he might be ready for a big fight. Austin Williams versus Denzel Bentley. Not one that I'd thought of, but I think that would be a good fight to watch. Oh, Lewis Hart's joined the chat. Lewis Hart, he's a Cub reporter. I've taken him under my wing. He works for Boxing Social, but we won't hold that against him.
Did you say club reporter, like club fighter?
I said Cub reporter, like very young, but yeah, I think both work. He said his first comment on here is shut, and then he corrected himself, but not deleted the first message and said, shut up. Thanks, Lewis. It's good to know your maturity belies your tender years. And then he suggests Liam Davis against Shabazz Masood. Again, good fight, but I think Liam Davis has got his next one lined up as well, defending that European title on the Magnificent Seven show. Base the Kid, Dalton Smith against Pierce O'Leary. Now, I've got to say, I hadn't thought of that one, but I actually really like that, instantly like that fight. Dalton Smith, Pierce O'Leary, because obviously we can't have Harlem Eubank, he's with Wasserman. We can't have Adam Azim, he's with Boxer. But Dalton Smith, Pierce O'Leary, with the winner of that then going on towards world level, yeah, feel, inject that into my veins, as the kids say. Or do the kids say it? Maybe Lewis Hart can let us know. Welsh Monkey VR says, Mayer won clearly and had to endure. Jonas holding on for dear life. Lewis Hart, again, he can't get enough now. Ray Ford against Nick Ball. As already mentioned, Nick Ball's got to get through Ray Vargas first, as Larry Liston also says. Hamza Shiraz versus Amo Williams. That's just kind of mix of the middleweight fights that was suggested before. Owen, really hope we don't see Andy Cruz versus Sam Noakes, for fuck's sake. You and me both, mate. Shiraz versus Austin Williams. Italma Fisher. Of course, Italma Fisher. That's the fight. Waldley against McKean. Interesting. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I mean, if we're only getting 5 fights, I'm not sure I would want to use one for that. Dennis McCann against Shabazz Masood. Again, McCann's fighting Brad Strand, gym mate of Nick Ball on the Magnificent Seven show. And I think that's actually a big risk from the McCann camp. So we'll have to see how that one works out. Ball versus Warrington. I've seen Ball versus Warrington suggested in loads of places, but whether the rematch happens or not between Warrington and Lee Wood, you'd have to say Lee Wood's the superior guy, like in terms of how you'd rank them at the moment, despite the finish and stuff. So you'd probably want Nick Ball against Lee Wood, surely. But then again, they've both got other fish to fry currently. Thunder Road says Francis Warren versus Frank Smith would be good too. Yeah, I mean, Francis Warren have a big weight advantage. It'd have to be at a catch weight. Frank Smith, I think he had one white collar fight, which he won very early stoppage. So he didn't get the rounds in. That was a few years ago as well. So he might be a bit rusty. We saw him sparring Eddie. He didn't look too clever in that one. So I don't know. That's a real pick-em. Larry Liston says Otterbeck will probably beat Raymond Ford. Lewis Hart again. Jesus, Lewis, get your own show, mate. Says Hopi Price versus Nate Collins. Ramoni Mode XD says Prince Nassim versus Lee Wood. I mean, we talked about catch weight. that definitely have to be at some sort of weird weight. Base the Kid says Craig's with Matchroom still. Lewis Hart likes Ayman's club reporter remark. Owen says Lewis Hart is Charlie Parsons' okay mate. Eddie Hearn owns Boxing Social. I don't think he does officially. I actually know who owns Boxing Social, but Eddie Hearn is certainly featured heavily in Boxing Social. Maybe Lewis Hart would like to explain that as well. Lewis Hart sounds like another Joe Pugh covering Misfits boxing, says Thunder Road. Lewis is going to regret coming on here. I would never cover that bollocks, says Lewis Hart. Pretty sure he was there at the weekend. The only kids that say inject it into my veins are druggies, mate, says Ramoni Mode XD. I will bear that in mind. Peter McGrail versus someone in Frank's stable. He was dominating that guy until his Poppadom chin got cracked. We'll look at that. Lewis Hart, you cover Eddie Hearn talking about packet of crisps and his favourite T-shirts, mate, says Owen. What is his favourite T-shirt, though? I'd really like to know. Larry Liston, McGrail needs to get that rematch. Great fighter, but overextended himself. Hopefully he can get back on track. Loads of potential. Ayman, let's make Lewis welcome here. Ayman, come on. You got to go through the baptism of fire when you're a club reporter.
Yeah, I guess so.
Ramoni Mode XD, yeah, reminded me of Pacquiao getting KO'd like that. I hope Peter can come back strong. And Lewis Hart protesting he was at Mayer Jonas. Why didn't you join us when we were talking about that fight then? You could have actually added something. I was holding a SecondsOut camera. Wow. Who are you about to hit over the head with it is the question. Yeah, getting back to the subject, I think a lot of these were good. I can't remember all the ones that I put on X when I was suggesting fights, but I think Anthony Yard against Callum Smith is a natural. It was a fight that was already being talked about before the Matchroom versus Queensberry show was agreed. I think that's an excellent one. As someone suggested, Moses Italma against Johnny Fisher. They've both done plenty of sparring with some of the top fighters around today already. Fisher, Southern Area champion, probably ready to move on to the next level. Italma still very young, probably can't fight for the British title for a couple of years still. But he was an excellent amateur. Johnny Fisher, obviously, not so much. Started as a pro and learned as he went kind of thing, and he's still doing so. So different backgrounds, but probably at similar stages now of their career. It's a way to jumpstart Moses' Talma. I suppose from Fisher's point of view and also from Matchroom's, it's kind of maximum risk for medium reward. You know, you're going to get well paid for going out to Saudi, but if you take a loss, Johnny Fisher's a big cash cow for Matchroom at a certain level. He's got a massive fan base, which he's worked hard to cultivate. What does he really gain from a win over Moses' Talma at this stage of their respective careers? So I wouldn't hold out too much hope of that one happening, but you never know. Some of the others, Hamza Shiraz against Felix Cash, if indeed he is counted as a Matchroom fighter. Will Felix Cash want to go in to such a risky fight so soon after a long layoff? That's something we would need to think about, or he would need to think about, certainly. Hamza Shiraz still got to get past Liam Williams before all of that, but excellent fighter. So that would be a mouth-watering fight. I think Nick Ball against Lee Wood is probably the best of all of them. Two world-class fighters at their weight with the respective promoters. But again, we wait to see if Nick Ball can beat Ray Vargas for the WBC belt. That's a mammoth task in itself. But if he does come through that and there's, you know, sufficient time in between, a unification fight between him and Lee Wood kind of sells itself. Excellent fight, that one. Any others, Ayman? Who am I missing?
It depends, really. It depends on their statuses. Like you mentioned, Cash is potentially a free agent, so we might be able to strike him out of the conversation. Craig Richards is on Matchroom Boxing's roster listed online, so we can include him in the mix-up as well. But depending on fighters who get picked up across the board, maybe you can include them in. What about Harry Scarf versus Conor Benn? Conor Benn wants to pick up a title, legitimize himself in the hardcore boxing fans' eyes. It might not be the big fight he wanted, but there'll be a big payday there and a fight that he'll think he can win. Harry Scarf will feel he can win as well too. What about that fight there?
Is David Avanesian still with Warren?
That was what I was about to say as well too. I believe he's a free agent, but if he wants to get picked up, if they can do a deal, he can be Queensberry and Ben can be Matchroom. That's a fight in offering as well that's been talked about, that people have wanted for a long, long time. Same sort of situation with Fabio Wardley as well too. Last seen on in I think Queensberry, kind of under the Queensberry banner. Maybe they have options on him. Maybe they can get picked up as well, signed exclusively to Queensberry and put him in. Actually, no, it wouldn't work. I messed up myself. I was going to say Joe Joyce, but he's with Queensberry, so I've messed that up entirely myself. What a shame there. But yeah, those kind of machinations of what I've what kind of was playing around with my brain kind of go through my head. Maybe
make Joyce against Chisora, and the loser has to retire.
There you go. Joyce versus Chisora. Thank you for helping me out there, Danny.
I don't want to see Chisora or Joyce getting any more punishment in their careers, apart from this one fight I'm suggesting, which will probably dish out a lot of punishment. Mm-hmm. But whoever loses that then has to retire. Write that into the contract, like WWE style. And yeah, I wouldn't mind watching that. I don't know. I think it'll be a punishing fight on both sides, but probably relative. I don't know if it would be well matched. I think Joyce has probably still got more to offer, even after those back-to-back defeats to Zhang. But that's one that they could be looked at. Like Chisora, for all his influence out in the Middle East, we haven't seen him on one of these. They are reckoning like in a major fight on one of these Saudi shows yet. So him against Joe Joyce, quite fancy that one. A few more suggestions in the chat. Where are we? John Wick, probably not the real one. Say that about all the heavyweights. How long do we think the relationship between promoters will last? Short-lived, or is this a long-term thing, do we think? I imagine that as long as the money tap is switched on, it will last. Once the wells run dry, which might be a better analogy given the region, I think they'll probably go back to maybe not quite as bitter as they were before. Maybe this kind of detachment and this I don't know what's the word, rapprochement, this reunion between the two promoters. Maybe it'll be, you know, warmer than it was before, but I don't think it'll last long term. Lewis Hart, once again, he might as well just host the show, says, what do we make of Aaron McKenna against Chris Eubank Jr.? I'll make it. You'd make Aaron McKenna a huge underdog at this stage of his career. And what would Chris Eubank Jr. have to gain by entertaining that fight? Owen says, Henry Turner versus Campbell Hatton. Use the Hatton name. Game changed. I mean, that'd be great for Henry Turner, wouldn't it? I'm not sure about that one. I'm sure there's other higher profile and higher world ranked people at Campbell Hatton's weight in the Queensberry side, but it escapes me at the moment, but I'll do my research. Ramoni Mode says, no way Eubank would dominate McKenna. McKenna is a British level fighter. I don't think we know for certain what level McKenna is yet. He obviously got a late notice substitute at the weekend. And fair play to Mickey Ellison for coming in. But we never really got to see how good he was. I was looking forward to his fight with Linus Adofio, and I think that would have told us a lot more about Aaron McKenna. So maybe that can get rescheduled. Owen says Eubank Brook is done, apparently. I'm not sure if it's done or not, but I mean, it's a more intriguing fight, and it's a much higher profile fight than Eubank against an Aaron McKenna, for example. But I'm not sure Brook should be coming back, and certainly not at that weight, but we shall see. Base the Kid, Leewood has given up the featherweight title. Ray Ford is fighting Otterbeck for it in April. See. So it wouldn't be a unification fight. It'd be Leewood challenging for Nick Ball's belt. Still a very good fight, in my view. 38-year-old Brook, sad to see, says Ramoni Mode. I'm going to ignore Lewis Hart now while he continues suggesting ones that he hopes the chat will agree with. Ramoni Mode, he looked a shell of himself against the washed Khan. Doubt he'd do anything to Eubank. But it's a sellable fight, isn't it? And Eubank Ben fell through. Eubank needs a big fight and a big winnable fight. I can understand it. Jay Sharp says, hello from Brooklyn, New York. Hello, Jay Sharp. Larry Liston, Mohammed Salam, the head of Saudi's oil company, is valued at $2 trillion. They aren't running out of money for at least 100 years. Yeah, but they switch what they want to devote that money to. That's the thing. You know, it's Frank Warren is the man in the box seat at the moment, but next year it could be UFC, or it could be motor racing, or it could be horse racing. Who knows? You know, it's whatever fits the bill at the time. They've obviously, WWE was signed up on a 10-year contract. I'm not sure how long of that's left now, but they've been doing it for a while. So we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, not going to run out of money anytime soon. Thunder Road, with the way things are going, I'm expecting both Hearn and Warren to take a shahada to curry more favour with the Saudis. Curry more favour. See what you did there. Very good. Wood has moved up to 130. He won't go back to 126, says Base the Kid. Well, I'm finding out a lot. Every day's a school day, if you like. So maybe it won't be Lee Wood. Maybe we will have to go back to Josh Warrington against Nick Ball, which would be an excellent fight in its own right. Plenty to chew on there, and please do keep the comments coming in, and also vote in our poll about Mayer Jonas, whether it's a robbery or simply a close fight. We'll give you the results at the end of the show. But now we are going to talk about a big fight that's happening this weekend out in the US, as John Ryder, our road warrior, if you like, once again puts it all on the line. He's taking on Jaime Munguia. Munguia obviously has plans to face Canelo at some point in the future in an all-Mexican battle. But he has to get through Ryder first. Ryder was obviously beaten by Canelo last year, but showed incredible bravery and resolve in that fight. Didn't win many rounds after getting his nose broken early in the fight, but proved to a lot of people just what metal he's got inside him. I don't mean the actual metal, but more his strong will. And now he goes up against Jaime Munguia, which on the surface seems like a more winnable fight for him than Canelo. But he is out in the US. We talked about decisions in the UK earlier. I'm not sure how easy it would be to get a decision over Jaime Munguia in Arizona. Ayman, what do you make of the fight?
Yeah, I think when Jaime Munguia, at least his recent fight, especially the last fight over against Derevyanchenko, which was my fight of the year for last year, he's been in these good, all-action fights, exciting fights where you might not call Jaime Munguia a must-see fighter, but what he delivers in the ring, especially last time out, was must-see. Very much one where you can replay and watch again and show someone who's not a boxing fan, hey, this is why you should watch boxing. Look at these guys go at it. Look at this. This is still happening. We don't have to harken back to... We don't have to talk about Hagler Hearns all the time. We don't have to talk about Gatti Ward all the time. No one's going to say, oh, remember Derevyanchenko and Munguia in those sort of terms, but you can flick it on and say it's still happening. We've still got these fights that deliver that popcorn entertainment. And I think that will be the similar sort of thing here, although I think Ryder will be the one really to disengage from that more so than Jaime, who will bring it. I think Ryder will be a lot more tactical and look to kind of counter Munguia as Munguia comes forward, and look to kind of expose some of the weaknesses that he's shown in being able to, in that Derevyanchenko being that small, diminutive, stocky kind of fighter, was able to find those gaps coming under Munguia to the body, then up to the head, and really kind of have Munguia back rocking. That's where Ryder will see his base game plan for the victory in the fight. And like you said there, Ryder knows very much so that he's probably not going to get the victory on the card, so he's got to go for the knockout here. And he's not going to be favoured for that either, but he's got to take those moments as they present themselves. My worry for a Ryder perspective is that Canelo, he was able to survive against Canelo because Canelo didn't really push on the gas and really kind of looked to overwhelm him. If this was Canelo of a few years back, then I don't think Ryder would have stayed as long in the ring as Ryder did do. And that's when Munguia has that freshness. That's when Munguia has a different kind of mentality at this stage in his career, that he will look to throw and throw and throw and try to overwhelm his opponents into submission. And that's the real worry for me from a Ryder perspective. But Ryder's shown his knowledge in the ring, that he knows how to keep defensively sharp and navigate through the round. So maybe Ryder does, if it gets heavy, find his way through to the final bell. But I think the favour has to go in Munguia's camp for the freshness here, but not one that Ryder will feel that he's really up against it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you said there, if Ryder does choose to kind of move and counter rather than stay up close, while I can understand the sense in those tactics, I think getting a decision in that way on the road, especially in America where they favour aggression so heavily, it's going to be an uphill battle. Larry Liston says, Ryder versus Munguia is my pick for Fight of the Year 2024. It's a great underrated fight. Hopefully Ryder comes in at 100%. Ramoni Mode, Ryder, Munguia gets hit a lot right on the chin. I think Ryder takes it. Jay Sharp, Munguia gets a decision. Ryder needs an unlikely KO. Yeah, there was a period in Ryder's career where he was banging everyone out, wasn't he? And that seems to have dried up a bit now. But I don't know. You know, Munguia looks pretty tough as well. It's going to be interesting to see what Freddie Roach has been working on with Jaime. Perhaps his defense is more polished. I don't know. I mean, is Freddie Roach known for making fighters more defensively solid? Didn't do that with Ayman Khan necessarily. And with others, I think it's more setting traps, working on how to deploy your power and strength in the best way. He's more of an attacking coach rather than a defensive one. But we shall see. Maybe it's just the quality of sparring and you know, just generally in the quality of trainers in that wildcard gym as well that are the main bonuses there. Ramoni Mode, Ryder broke his nose in the second round against Canelo and kept it on him. God bless you all. To beat any world champion going the distance, you have to totally dominate as a world champion with several titles, etc. Not just being competitive, and so you should be this way. Okay, I think I get what he means there. Jay Sharp says Arizona judges have Munguia. Yeah, I mean, he did get the benefit of that decision against Dennis Hogan, didn't he? Where a lot of people thought Hogan won. That was in Mexico. But Arizona's close enough to the border. Ryder, naturally bigger man, says Base the Kid. I think Ryder does enough to win, but won't get the decision. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the concern for me, is that he will outbox him to an extent, maybe outwork him in the later rounds as well, if Munguia's gassed himself out with that early onslaught trying to stop Ryder, because I think he'll try to do that simply to get one up on Canelo, who wasn't able to. So I could see Ryder definitely doing enough to win, but in a heartbreaking similarity to the fight with Callum Smith, maybe doesn't get the decision on the cards. And whereas the Callum Smith one was a very close fight, I think even Ryder would have to absolutely dominate Jaime Munguia out in Arizona to get the decision. And then you've got the other possibility, if Ryder's going to win, and that's to get a knockout. I'm not sure Munguia's looked particularly fallible or vulnerable in that respect. And Ryder, I'm not sure he's a massive one-punch hitter either. But if he can put a combination together, he's got a chance. I think he certainly hits stiffly enough to command respect. And it will be an excellent fight, action-packed fight. But it's hard to make a case for Ryder being the favourite, that's for sure. Ramoni Mode says, hope Ryder doesn't get robbed like he did in the Callum Smith fight, where he was bashing him against the ropes and lost somehow. Owen, not sure what happened to Ryder's power. Expect Munguia to win. Ryder, big weakness is he's open to uppercuts. Yeah, I mean, Munguia will definitely be bringing plenty of those. John Wick, it feels like we have a chat about poor judging every few fights. Do you have any suggestions on how to improve things? Yeah, well, that's what we were saying earlier. Has it got, you know, demonstrably worse in the UK than it's been in previous years? And we've kind of done that bit of the chat and we've passed that segment. So maybe we'll talk about it more on next week's edition. But I mean, there's a number of things that have been suggested, you know, putting the judges in a separate room, like noise-proofed or noise-cancelling headphones at ringside, having them all watch from the same angle rather than different angles, having a fourth judge or one of the three judges up in like a skybox type scenario. So there's loads of possibilities out there and they would need to be trialed and stuff. But I think when it's something that relies on human judgment, there's always going to be human error. And there's only so much you can do to mitigate that. But yeah, while we wish Ryder the very best of luck this weekend, we mentioned his fight with Canelo and the fact that Jaime Munguia wants to get his fellow Mexican in the ring. But from recent reports, it appears that Canelo is going in again against Charlo. No, not the Charlo he's already beaten. He's got a few issues outside the ring to deal with. But Jamal Charlo. Or am I getting my Charlos mixed up, actually? Either way, apparently Canelo's fighting Jamal Charlo, not Jamel, who he's already defeated. But Jamal's been inactive for like 2 years or something, I believe. And he was due to come back. I'm not sure if that's still happening as like a tune-up or whatever. But that's what they're talking about for May. A lot of people are accusing Canelo of just a cash grab, basically. You know, they all want to see him fight Munguia or even more so David Benavidez. But it looks like it's going to be Charlo. What was your reaction to that news, Ayman?
I must have missed this. Must have missed this myself. I hadn't seen it, but a little bit underwhelming, really. I don't know. We were kind of all expecting the fight with Benavidez to potentially come, and that's kind of been the one that's at the top of people's lists, really. Outside of maybe a potential fight with Terence Crawford, if that was ever to happen, and if Spencer's officially relinquished his rights to a rematch, what with the eye surgery that he's had there, that would pave the way for Crawford maybe to move up and try to dare to be great against another current modern great that's still active. So it's a little bit of a popping of a balloon, I guess, to hear that he's fighting against Jamal Charlo. Yeah, it's a bit underwhelming, Danny, to be honest with you. I don't know how the people in the chat feel, but I was hoping for maybe bigger and better here from Canelo. But I don't know. Maybe this is it's probably just a way to, I guess, if Benavidez didn't want the fight, the PBC was scrambling for opponents there, and they need something exciting with this new streaming deal that they've gone for with exiting from the broadcast deal that they had before on TV. You need a good opponent. You need someone who's going to bring it on the mic as well too, and the Charlos both bring that together, as does Jamal independently. Independently. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's part of the thinking that Jamal can really sell alongside Canelo, and you've got that American versus Mexican kind of fight, which is sold before in the past. So maybe that's the thinking as the launch pad and launch off into the streaming deal that they've gone here. They've gone a bit safe here with the tried and tested to go with that fight with Canelo once again picking up the victory.
Yeah, I mean, Canelo's taken a lot of stick about even considering this fight, given Benavidez is out there, Crawford, as you mentioned, is out there, a Bivol rematch, which, you know, Bivol said he's been more than willing to have for years, like since he defeated Canelo, however long that's been, but he's never heard anything back from Canelo's team. And Bivol now looks towards his own hopeful undisputed fight with Artur Beterbiev. But yeah, I mean, Canelo, when you're in his position, you can fight whoever you want. He's the biggest star in world boxing. But will he continue to hold that position if he fights people that he's widely expected to defeat without much trouble? And that's no disrespect to Charlo, who is, of course, unbeaten. But he's been out the ring for ages, and he's done nothing in the fights he's won to suggest that he could beat Canelo, particularly if it's at super middleweight rather than middleweight, which I imagine it would be. I don't see Canelo making middleweight again anytime soon. Jamal recently beat Jose Benavidez. Yeah, so that was his comeback fight. Fair enough. So he's beaten David's brother, and now he's getting to fight the guy that David wants. I'm not sure that was part of the plan. Very comfortable victory, says Ramoni Mode. Owen says, Charlo in May, Munguia in September. Canelo is refusing to give Benavidez a rub or pass him over. Yeah, I mean, Benavidez is probably the biggest threat to Canelo at super middleweight. I think Bivol has Canelo's number and would prove that once again in the rematch. But I think Benavidez at super middle, I can't see anyone else who I think would give Canelo a tough fight at 168 pounds. That doesn't mean I think Benavidez would win, but maybe Canelo feels that his kind of daring to be great era is over now. He's just content to sit back and let the cash roll in. Legacy relatively secure given how many belts he's won and how many divisions he's gone through and some of the big fights he's already been involved in. But it is disappointing for fans. I think one of the main reasons people were so excited when he signed with PBC for, 3-fight deal, was that at least one of those fights would seemingly have to be against David Benavidez. And now it appears with that fight within their grasp, it may not be. So it's kind of, here's what you could have won for people old enough to remember the Bullseye game show. So we'll wait to see what Canelo decides. But yeah, disappointing. I mean, Ayman, who would you like to see Canelo fight next if it could be anyone? Would it be Benavidez, or would it be Crawford, or would it be the rematch with Bivol?
I saw a clip rolling around. I know it's not going to happen, but it did excite me, and it sort of kind of lent itself to the mindset of Canelo when he was talking about fighters and challenges. And Canelo's talked about challenges that he wants, and challenges are the things that really motivate him, having done everything you can do really in the sport now, made your money, had your achievements, had your accolades, had your controversies, had your adversities. Everything's kind of been ticked off for the Canelo kind of list, whether he intended to tick it off or not. But there was that little clip I saw of him saying, "Look, a fight that excites me, the fight that gives me lots of challenges, Artur Beterbiev. Artur Beterbiev will be tied up with a Bivol undisputed clash. If that happens, WBC still need to sign off on Dimitri Bivol's involvement in that fight. But if that does happen, then that's Beterbiev tied up. But if not, then maybe Canelo and Beterbiev can happen if Canelo's of the mindset that he wants that challenge." But that was kind of gives you the idea as to where Canelo stands in terms of his targets. But that Benavidez fight is the one that rings out as what I want to see, because I don't think there's any other real fight out there in the division of any real kind of significance that stands to be a good opponent, aside from maybe Morrell. But you're really kind of pushing and seeking to find that. And then you're dipping out into the other divisions where you're looking for Crawford, and no one will doubt his greatness in the ring, but at a completely different weight, at a weight he's never fought at. It kind of takes a bit of shine off of it in some degree. And outside of that, then you're looking, maybe if I'm trying to pull out names from different places, you're looking at the crossover potential. You're looking at AJ and Ngannou happening. Maybe you look at the fight that I asked Conor McGregor if he had interest in and if he'd want to fight. And he said, yeah, I'll take it. I'll take Canelo Alvarez. I'll beat Canelo Alvarez. Maybe they do something like that, something completely left field. But again, that would have to happen over in Saudi. That wouldn't be part of the PBC mantra as of right now. The PBC aren't really fully deep in with the Saudis as of right now, as are Matchroom and Queensberry. So something would have to change pretty quickly for that to happen. But that's a pipe dream or a pipe fantasy for now. And really the fight I was looking for outside of anything else was the Benavidez one.
I'm so glad you said Conor McGregor, because when you said crossover fight, I thought you were going to say Jake Paul.
Definitely not.
Thank God not. Yeah, Ramoni Mode not being very nice in the chat here. He says Benavidez couldn't even KO Plant. I mean, Plant's a very tough fighter. Canelo did well to stop him. Plant's no mug. And then he says, why is there so much hype from him beating a bum like Andrade who's been dropped by a journeyman? Andrade was an excellent fighter, two-weight world champion, very skilled technically, very awkward, hard puncher as well. It was just that he got left to wither on the vine for too long. He was inactive for long periods. And by the time he ended up getting his big shot against Benavidez, he did all he could, but all he could only lasted for half the projected distance. But, no disrespect to him. He's a very accomplished fighter. Owen says, yeah, the Saudis want a McGregor boxing match. Could be Canelo. He's done a laughing emoji, but I feel it's one of those that could actually happen. Maybe we've hit upon something there. We're just getting towards wrapping up now. So if we can get the results of the poll up, we'll see how you all voted. Mod Father Frank, if you can hear us, please let us know. Please close the poll and let us know whether people thought Natasha Jonas's victory over Mikaela Mayer was a robbery, quote unquote, or simply a close fight. Just waiting for that. Here we go. The Jonas message was 60% say robbery, 40% say close fight. Ouch. Now, I really hope Joe Gallagher's not watching. Well, let's hope that Mayer gets the rematch in that case, because the SO Live audience have spoken. Jay Sharp says, Andrade solid, just not a sellable fighter. Yeah, I mean, Winky Wright was the same, wasn't he? But no one would dispute that he's fully deserving of a place in the Hall of Fame. I'm not saying Andrade should go in the Hall of Fame. I'm just saying he's a very good fighter. And Ramoni Mo's trying to educate me now, saying Andrade had a horrible resume, mate. That doesn't mean he's not a really good fighter. And I don't think his resume is horrible. I've certainly seen worse. But we could go on and back and forth about that for a long time. But we're coming to the end of, excuse me, at allotted time. And Ayman, as is customary, you get the closing remarks to our wonderful SO Live audience. And just thank you all for chipping in with your chats, likes, subscriptions, the lot. Couldn't do it without you.
I would have thought that with the poll results, when people are screaming and calling for robbery, that would be a lot more distinct than 60-40.
Fair point.
So maybe there's something to glean into that, into the wider feel of just the immediacy of the fight and just the immediacy of Twitter. Now, I know that people in here will also probably be on Twitter, but when you're screaming robbery, when you scream, like, I felt like a Taylor Catterall fight had a lot more kind of emotion and tag to it as to people really kind of feeling that that was a robbery. Maybe people just don't care as much for this fight was probably the case there, or maybe people, it seems the other conclusion can be made there with that lack of real distinction there. 60-40, I thought it'd be a lot more that maybe it wasn't as big of a robbery, or it was close than maybe some people felt in the industry. But anyway, moving on, we'll have to debate that another time if it does come up in a rematch as well. That's what Mikaela Mayer wants. We want a rematch with you guys every single week, Mondays. We're live. Make sure if you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, post-fight as well. Post this live too on Seconds Out. We'll be keeping you abreast of all the action throughout the week and the weeks heading into this new year. Still new year, but we're setting out our stalls very, very much at the start and early to bring you the best content we can do. So thank you once again for tuning in. Hopefully we'll see you again next week as well too, to chop up everything that's happened, and looking forward to Ben versus Dobson in Las Vegas. Thank you so much, guys.